this is at Lunatate.com. So I went to school here, Monte Vista Elementary School. Speaking of education, you know, speaking of teaching the children right, you know, and testing them. I'm a star. To do star testing. I do test stars. Sometimes they come down. But anyways, remembering the old days when I used to go here, I'm thinking about, you know, if I could have talked to myself in the past, what I would have told myself growing up. I never really thought about that before. Maybe a couple times. But now I'm going into reflection of it. You know, it's where I went to school at. So I'm thinking about education. I think education needs to be a little bit more deeper as a kid, you know. Like we should have a class on, you know, friends that backstab, you know, fake friends. We should have a class on family members that betray. You know, we don't have to teach biblical stories because, I mean, we, you know, supposedly only stories and whatnot. You know, but let's teach, you know, reality for what it is. Yes, prepare them, you know, maybe even going into junior high, have them have a sex education class, teach them, you know, don't take them to Knott's Berry Farm, you know, take them to Skid Row, you know, which most of the males are predominantly, you know, most of the homeless people are predominantly males, you know. Women have a little bit easier in the society. It's a little bit, and I'm not chauvinistic and all that and blah, blah, blah. But it's a little bit more of a female-dominated society, you know. They could find a husband, you know, through sexuality and things of that nature. You know, I don't really see too many women that are homeless unless they're on drugs and things of that nature. You know, but like I said, let's teach, you know, let's not take them to places of, I guess let's teach them the truth. I mean, a little bit. Let's not scare them, but let's show them a reality of, like, you know, prepare them for the world. You know, they don't teach us much at school. They don't prepare us for the harshness of it, you know, the reality that sets in, you know, as you become an adult, you know, the real world that's out there. Let's prepare them at least like at 5th and 6th grade, as they get older, have a class on different things. It's not all kickball and stuff like that, you know. Junior high, then you get into more, you know, then things start changing. You don't go into a harsh reality. You meet bullies and this and that. I mean, there's a lot of crazy occurrences. Like I said, you know, take them to different places, show them, hey, yeah, introduce them to art, introduce them to also a lot of creativity, but also introduce them to reality. You know, take them to a place and say, hey, you know, look, like show them a film on jail. You know, like, look, you know, this is jail. This is what jail is. You know, this is what war is. You know, this is what this is. You know, parents don't teach that because, like I said, they're too busy working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. You know, they can't even talk to their kid, or they take them away through system, or because of child support. You know, a person that cares can't even see their own kid. You know, to teach them properly. I teach everyone I meet properly because, you know, or my son especially, whenever I get a chance to talk to him, you know, hopefully he's getting the education from me, because school, I'm sorry, it's a little underfunded, you know. They don't teach the proper history. They don't teach them the proper grammar. You know, they don't have the funding to teach children individually to branch out and become something. You know, all it does. I mean, it does educate you, but also it limits you. You know, it limits your boundaries. You know, it teaches you, yeah, you could be president, but then, well, wait a minute, I don't know anybody from South Almonte that went to Harvard, like I said, or to Yale, or to Princeton, or to Ivy League schools. You know, but I believe we can do that, and anybody could. We can make it out of here. We can make it out of South Almonte, you know, Whittier. You know, was the president born over there? Yeah, I think it was one of them. You know, lived in a little wooden house or whatever, Woodrow, or I don't know, one of those dudes. I don't know. But you know, Montebello. Look at Oscar De La Hoya. You know, Baldwin Park, San Gabriel Valley. You know, LA. Around here, I mean, a lot of famous people come from out LA. Well, they come over here to make it because LA is known as a mecca. You know, if we branch out to LA, you know, expand, you know, our name can grow, and we could become, you know, keep pushing for whatever your beliefs are, kids of the future, because it's very important to have respect in life. Also, you know, say please, thank you, may I, you know, call your grandmother if your grandmother's a grandmother. I try to teach that to my family, you know, to the kids, and I went crazy in the head because I would get kicked out. I'd get the cops called on me and arguments with my family because they would say, oh, it's not your kid. Well, dude, it's not my kid, but I'm just telling them to have the proper respect to call my grandmother, if they could call my grandfather, hey, Grandpa Robert, you know, and they would call my other grandmother, hey, by her name, and I don't appreciate that. And yes, it did anger me, and I would say, hey, you know, blah, 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 to the kids, and I wouldn't tell them in a bad way. I'd say, hey, look, you know, that's grandma, can you just call her grandma? And I would get snapped at. I mean, little things like that, and they need to be taught, you know, which if not, the children are going to grow up. I don't think I should be, as a father, called my name. I want to be called, hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. It's a proper term of respect. And a lot of children nowadays, they grow up without respect, you know, fighting over things, fighting over materialism, competition-based society driven through insanity. And as you get older, you know, you don't realize that, but you're already instilled to follow that path of competition, of like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta be better, I'm gonna fire this guy if he's better than me. It's like, why can't we support someone that has a talent? You know, I see Justin Bieber getting that. I see people, you know, well, not to get into race, but I know African Americans, they support a lot of their kind. You know, whites, I guess Asians do too, Asian-based business, you know. But when a Mexican tries to rise like I do, all I see is people pushing me down with negativity, drowning me, you know, crabs in a barrel, like they say. You know, instead of supporting a person that, you know, needs help, somewhat limited help, they'd rather see me fail than to see themselves rise. You know, and I realize that. So, you know, but like I said, yes, I do have to talk about education, but I think, you know, I'm lucky that I educated myself. I have friends that educate themselves through internet, through books, through Discovery Channel, through this and that, through underground hip-hop, like I said, some hip-hop, radio, whatever, music, classic music. You know, there's a lot of great artists out there. If you look them up, I believe I'm one of them, like I said. You know, look up the great artists, Diego Rivera, Picasso, Van Gogh, you know, reach for your goal. I leave this documented because I want to speak to a lot of children of the future that you're going to go through the same course of life, and there's people that struggle out there, but don't give up. Just have fun. Look what I do. I meet a lot of women. That's my pay. I mean, it might not be about it's not about the money. Somewhat it is, I mean, because, you know, who doesn't need money to survive? But ultimately, it's about your art, your artisticness. You know, I'm a designer. I can make a fur jacket. You know, people like it. I rock it. I don't care if I sell it or not. I look good in it, you know? And that's the truth. I live in my reality. And my reality is a somewhat pure one. I don't have to sell my soul to make $1, and, you know, but I'm still trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. But till then, peace.